And we'd like to welcome our Danielle Giles, Plex Accredited Implementation Specialist, recently accredited, so congrats, Danielle. She joined us about a year ago. She came here direct from Plex. She's done quite a bit of work in the maintenance module. Today she's going to share her vast knowledge of the module with you, hopefully what your appetite to use a module that you probably already own. So Danielle, go ahead and take it away.
All right, thanks, Patty. I just want to verify everyone can hear me okay? Can you hear me right, Patty?
I can hear you.
Perfect. All right, so first of all, good morning, good afternoon, morning where I am, probably afternoon where you are. Today, put together this session for you to share some basic knowledge on preventative maintenance in Plex to help you have a better understanding of maintenance and the processes and the different parts that go along with it. As time allows, just to kind of go off of what Patty previously said, we will continue these Plex Ed series, these education series in the future. So if you like what you're seeing, please continue to come on back. If there's something out there, if there's some sort of a topic that maybe you want us to talk about in one of our next sessions, please email us and let us know about that as well. Again, we are recording, and after you're done with this session, so you'll be able to reference this video again in the future, along with all of our other previous sessions as well. So today, let's just kind of review our agenda here. To start, we're going to go over some basics in Plex. So we're going to talk about maintenance in terms of security, and then we're going to talk about work requests, which are really the heart of maintenance within Plex. We'll discuss how we set those up. So we'll discuss how to create tasks and checklists. We'll discuss preventative maintenance schedules and custom schedules. We'll talk about work requests at the control panel and how we can, the different ways in which we can create work requests at the control panels. We'll also discuss how we do go ahead and just create those PMs overall so that they occur monthly, weekly, annually, however we have them set up. From there, we'll then talk about how to complete maintenance. So we'll go over the work request screen, discuss filtering options, discuss some of the visual cues on the actual work request screen itself. And then we'll discuss how to complete the work requests and PMs, how to generate new PMs. We'll discuss work request workflow as well. And we'll wrap up with a little bit about work request reporting and also some work request notifications. There will be time at the end of our session for some Q&A as well. So again, please hold all of your questions for the end of the presentation. We do have kind of a brief PowerPoint presentation to begin with, but the majority of our session today will be spent in Plex. I will warn you up front, a lot of what I will be showing today will be done in UX. However, even though we're going to be showing a lot in UX, I will have Classic as a backup, but within the maintenance module itself, there's really not much of a difference between UX and Classic. Most of the screens are called the same thing. The way that everything is set up is identical, and the way that the work requests function within the system is exactly the same as well. So again, if needed, I do have Classic ready in the background for us to kind of review as well. So before we actually get into maintenance, let's first talk about settings and Plex provision rules regarding maintenance in Plex. If you're familiar with the maintenance module and work requests, you're probably aware of a Plex provision rule, which is a role that is automatically created in Plex once you receive your PCN, and that role is called maintenance user. Anybody in your system who is going to be able, or who you need to complete work requests, need to be a part of that particular security role in the system. If that person or if those users do not have this role, they will not be able to complete requests. To some extent, based on how the rest of your security is set up, they might not even be able to access the work request screen. As you can see here, this role is also tied to a series of settings within the system as well. And again, these are available in both Classic and UX Plex. And we'll talk about some of these different settings a little bit later, but just know that some of these things do tie to the people actually having the security role. All right, so what are work requests? To begin with, work requests are basically a set of tasks that need to be completed to help you maintain and repair equipment within your company. Um, it's usually a set of predefined tasks that we can load into the system, and the work requests themselves can be scheduled. So we can have a running schedule to have a request looked at or completed based on the schedule that we set, or they can be requested by operators at the control panel if an issue comes up. Work requests generally refer to maintaining equipment within your system. So if you have pieces of equipment at different work centers, then your operators will be able to request some sort of maintenance to be done if the machine that they're using happens to go down. And again, work requests can be viewed at the work request screen, regardless of what type they are. So if they're just a general maintenance request coming from like the shop floor, for example, or if they're a preventative maintenance schedule, they both show on the work request screen. So in order to create our work requests, there's a bit of a hierarchy within Plex of these particular items here. And each item listed builds upon the one listed below it. So as we can see here, at the base of our work requests, we have tasks and we have special codes. From there, we then create our checklist. So our checklists include a series of tasks and special codes. From our checklist, we then create our schedules. So our PM schedules, again, are based off of like a monthly schedule, for example, and every month the checklist has to be completed. We then tie our schedules directly to our pieces of equipment. So everything below here filters down from our main piece of equipment. And equipment does not just refer to machines that will help you with the production of parts out on your operating floor. Equipment can refer to any sort of equipment within your facility, like lights or air conditioning units, printers, etc. So you can essentially store all those items as pieces of equipment in Plex and create work requests to go along with them as well. Another thing to keep in mind, while we may use equipment at a work center, there may be different instances of equipment at a single work center. So it's not always a one-to-one relationship between a work center and a piece of equipment. So for example, if we're running production in a kitchen, we might have a work center simply called kitchen. And within that kitchen, there might be 3 different ovens. So we can store each individual oven as a piece of equipment in the system, and then each one would have their own sort of preventative maintenance or work request schedule to run off of. So maybe one of those ovens needs to be checked once a month, while the other 2 ovens would have to be checked once every other week, for example. We can accommodate all of that within the maintenance system in Plex. So as we continue on with our presentation today, we'll take a look at all 5 of these items here individually. So to set up maintenance within Plex, we'll have to create our special codes, which are optional. We'll have to create maintenance tasks. We'll have to create checklists. We'll have to create our frequencies and our schedules. And if we are utilizing our maintenance for pieces of machinery or equipment used out on the manufacturing floor, we'll have to connect our equipment to work centers. To complete the maintenance in Plex, we'll have to run through our series of tasks that we create, mark those tasks as good or bad, and we'll always have to put our work request in a complete status once it's completed. Also, there are work request notifications, which I'll show you a little bit later, that we can use within the maintenance system. So using settings or the notification system, we can set up email notifications for work requests that are either created or completed. If we want to go the settings route, for example, we would set up a specific group within the groups or the team screen in Plex so that everyone within those groups would receive those notifications. And here's just a list of settings if you wanted to do the settings-based notifications within the work request system. And finally here for our PowerPoint, we can use workflow with work requests as well to help us kind of track and see the progress and the completion of the different work requests that we might have. This is also a good way for us to use notifications. We can use the workflow system to leverage our work request notifications as well. So at this point, I'm going to hop over into Plex. And we're going to start off here with our equipment. So within the equipment screen here, I'm just going to do an open search. And you can see here that I have a piece of equipment called automatic press or press 1. If I click into the press right here, it's going to show me my equipment details. So it's going to have like the name and the brand and the serial number here. If needed, we can tie our pieces of equipment to asset numbers. We can add purchase prices, etc. Down here, there's some information, and this information ties very well into maintenance schedules. So we can base our maintenance schedules off of a number of different things. So for example, we can use cycles or part cycles. We can base our production hours or our maintenance off of production hours. So let's say, like for example, after every 100 hours that this press is used in production, I can say that some sort of preventative maintenance has to be done on this press. And we can track that here in the background in the system. We also have a list here where some pending maintenance or some additional notes that we might have about that piece of equipment. You'll also notice here on the equipment detail screen that much like in Classic, we have a submenu here for our equipment. If I hop over into Classic here real quick and I bring up our press, we see the same sort of a submenu here with our equipment details, our PM schedules, our work requests, etc. So here within the PM schedules, that's going to show me all the different schedules that I have for this piece of equipment. And then my work requests are going to show me the actual current or even past due work requests that I have for this individual piece of equipment. But before we even get to that point, you got to remember that there are certain things that we have to do first to build up those PM schedules. So first things first, there is a setup table within Plex called Special Codes. And to navigate there, you can simply use the search function over here to look for your setup tables and search for your particular setup table. I already have the screen pulled up here for you, so you can see that it's within the maintenance database. If I click, already been populated within the system. And when we're filling out work requests, we can utilize special codes to help us further define why a task could be potentially considered bad. So for example, like if I'm checking my bearings on a piece of equipment and I'm checking to see what sort of a shape they're in, I can essentially say that the bearings are in bad shape, and I can select a special code of excessive wear. As you can see here, there is a field that says require note. So this is essentially saying that on my work request, if I select a special code here, I have to add some additional notes about why I selected this. Keep in mind though, special codes are optional. We do not have to use special codes at all. Within work requests, there is a special codes field, but there is also a text box where you can enter additional notes if you want to get a little more specific than what these codes already have here. So after we have our codes created, the next thing we need to consider in creating our work requests are the tasks. So the tasks are created here in the maintenance task setup screen. And the task screen is going to be a collection of every sort of maintenance task that you could do for any piece of machinery, any piece of equipment within your company. So if I have to check air pressure for something, I would have air pressure listed here. And just because I have multiple pieces of equipment where I might have to check an air pressure, I only need to enter the task once on my task list. So I can apply a single task to multiple pieces of equipment, to multiple checklists, etc. One other thing to keep in mind here when you're adding your maintenance tasks there is this flag called Create Follow-up Task. And we'll touch on this a little bit later, but essentially what that means is that if one of these tasks is marked bad on my work request, it's automatically going to create a follow-up task, a follow-up work request for me for that individual task. So again, remembering the hierarchy of maintenance here, we have our special codes and we have our tasks, and those are the basis of everything. Those two items then flow into what Plex calls a preventative maintenance checklist. So here on the preventative maintenance checklist screen, you can compile all of your different tasks that need to be done for a specific piece of equipment. So if I want to add a new checklist, I'll just press add here. And for this particular checklist, I want it to be completed every Tuesday and Thursday. And this is for my automatic press. Over here, we have an equipment group field that we can pick from. So as you can see, there's different types of equipment groups within the system. But for this, since I know my press is used for production, I'm going to select production. From here, I can enter any additional special instructions for this particular checklist. And down here, we have the associated tasks field. And if we go back here, every single task that is listed here on the setup screen also shows here. So I can pick and choose which task needs to apply to this particular checklist. So since we're doing this check every Tuesday and Thursday, we're just going to do a visual inspection. So I'll just select visual inspection here. If you're checking for something such as a temperature, you can enter a min and a max value for every time you check that temperature, so that something always has to be in between that min and max. And using the unit groups screen, you can define the different unit types that you're measuring in, and you can select them over here. So now that I have my checklist description and my group and my task defined, I'm just going to press OK. It's taking a minute here. We're going to give this some time here. So basically what this is going to do, it's going to bring me back out into that main checklist screen where it shows all the different checklists that I have created. Now though that we have a checklist created, we can apply that checklist to a specific PM schedule. So we're just going to go back over here to the equipment form real quick. And to add a brand new PM schedule for this piece of equipment, I'm just going to navigate to the PM schedule screen. And here is where I can start to build out the different schedules for this piece of equipment. As you can see right now, the press already has 2 different PM schedules associated with it. So there's one where something is checked every month on a Thursday. And then there's another one up here, which I believe is I believe this one goes every Wednesday. But the point I want to make here is that you can have multiple schedules for a single piece of equipment. So if there's something that I need to check monthly, I can just create the checklist for it and have this schedule come up once a month. What we're going to do is we're going to add a new schedule with that checklist that we just created to have that visual inspection completed every Tuesday and Thursday. So we're going to press add here. And down here in the scheduling section, you're going to see this field called frequency type. And our frequency types in Plex are determined, again, by what we discussed on the actual equipment screen. So I can check something every hour or a certain amount of hours. I can go off of my work center cycles. I can go off of a completion date, or I can do something called a fixed date by month. And the fixed date by month is probably the most common frequency type that is used that I've seen within the maintenance system. And this allows you to create your own custom schedules. So if I go over here into my recurring schedule screen, which in UX is called custom schedules or schedules, I can create a brand new schedule. And to do so, I press the add button. And I'm just going to call this one Tuesday, Thursday. And we're going to say to be completed every Tuesday and Thursday. And this is within our preventative maintenance module. And I'm going to say that this is going to repeat every single week on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Using the screen, I can create any sort of schedule that I want. So if I want to do something monthly, I can do something every 3 months. I can select a specific day of a week or a specific day of that month. So I can say that something always has to be completed on the 13th of every single month, for example. We can do the same thing annually. So I do something once a year, and I can do something on the first Wednesday in January every single year. But again, we're just going to go back here to every Tuesday and Thursday. I'm going to press OK. And this is going to create that schedule for me. So if I go back over here to my preventative maintenance schedule detail, I'm just going to refresh the screen so that it pulls in that new custom schedule I just created. I'm going to select my automatic press. And you're going to see here that the special task configuration, there's 3 tasks here. And that's because right now the CNC checklist is the checklist selected. So there's these 3 tasks that are associated with that particular checklist. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to select that Tuesday, Thursday automatic press. And again, we only selected the task of visual inspection, so that's what's going to show up here. If needed, I could add additional notes about this particular task, and that will show up on the work request itself. Down here in the scheduling section, I have a start date. This is always going to default to today's date. And this just means that my first one, if needed, would start today. I'm going to select my fixed date by month frequency type. And you can see when I did that, that custom schedule field popped up. So I can select my Tuesday, Thursday schedule. And then here I have a projected work request count. Right now it's set to 1, but if I set this to 3, as soon as I create this schedule, the system is automatically going to create 3 of these requests. Down here I can select a priority. Plex has a priority of low, medium, and high. And the priority is basically just how quickly this particular PM should be completed once it pops up on our work request screen. We're just going to leave this at medium for now. Down here is the responsibilities tab, and this kind of ties into that maintenance user. So anyone in our system right now that has the maintenance user permission or security role shows up here on our list. And I can select somebody. So let's just say Patty, for example. Patty is always now going to be responsible for creating this maintenance every time it comes up in the system. Down here in scheduled hours, I can document how long it should take somebody to complete this task or any listed tasks that we have here. If we're just doing a visual inspection, this might only take us 15 minutes or so. So we'll just enter in 0.25 there. Finally, I can select my work request type. Since I am creating a preventative maintenance, it automatically goes straight to a PM. So once we have all this information documented here, we're just going to press OK to add that new schedule. And as we can see here, we have 3 different schedules within the system now. From this point, I can go over to the work request screen. And it's going to filter automatically on my press. And it's going to show all of the PMs, follow-ups, or maintenances that I have out there for my particular piece of equipment. I'm just going to go back here real quick. I don't see that it updated on my work request schedule. There we go. So there are the 3 that I had just created with that Tuesday, Thursday checklist, and schedule. So this is how we would add a work request, or how we would create our custom preventative maintenances. We can also create work requests from the control panel as well. So over here on the control panel, I have a job set up for my press, and I have a current work status of production. There are two different ways that somebody can request a maintenance from the control panel. The first way is down here within the other functions section with the tab called work request. This again shows me all of the work requests that I have out there for this piece of equipment. And we can see that we have one that's already due. Actually, now we have two that are due. And that will always show here on the system. There are certain settings that we can put in place that would say that we cannot run production until both of these work requests are complete. But right now we're able to run production even though there's open requests out there. And so clicking into this link here, an operator can just press the add button up here to add a brand new work request for this piece of equipment. So they can enter a problem here to let you know that there's something wrong with this press. And then your maintenance team can go in and fill out the tasks and add the different tasks to the work requests themselves. Another way that we can add a work request through the system is by changing a work center status. So if there is a problem with my press, I can select a status of problem, and it's going to select some details and events that to go through the system here. Right now, what I have set up, I'm going to go back and do that one more time. Really quickly, if I press problem, you're going to see that there was an electrical problem. And here I can select my piece of equipment. Again, press 1. It automatically defaults to whatever is attached to the work center. I can check this work request box here, and then I can further define the problem. So we have a problem with the press. We're going to select press problem. I can choose a reason. So there might be something wrong with a wiring or a cable somewhere. And I can press next again. So right here, that work request has been created. And when I press OK or apply, that's also going to generate on the work request screen itself. So again, the maintenance users can go in there and add the different tasks that they have for or whatever they need to do to resolve the issues that are happening out on the operator floor. And the work center status this way is always going to go back to whatever the issue is. So this is essentially saying that there's a stoppage in production right now, and production cannot continue until maintenance fixes this press problem. Go back here to my work request screen, and we're just going to do a quick refresh. And we're going to see here that a maintenance request did come in. And that was what I had just added by changing the work center status. Some other cool things that we can do with work requests, if I take a look at this one, for example, we can add BOM items to our work requests. And to do this, it's done on the actual schedule screen. So in this particular checklist or schedule here, if I just go to update PM schedule, there's a button up here that says I can add a schedule item. So if I need to have gloves in order to perform this maintenance, I can automatically tie those supply items directly to the work request. And as the work request is completed, those BOM items or the supply items themselves will then be depleted from your inventory. Another thing here, if I go into this work request, I can add spare parts. So if I wanted to, let's say for example, there's something with this piece of equipment where it needs some additional oil, or I need to add oil to a piece of machinery, I can go to my spare parts, I can add a spare part, and I can select whatever it is that I need and pull it out of inventory. And when I go back out here onto the work request, we'll see that there's some other supply items being used here. And again, once this work request is completed, then that item is going to be depleted from inventory as well. I'm going to go back into one of the work requests that we had previously created. And as we can see here, we have our task, our visual inspection task. On this work request screen, there's a bunch of details here. So this basically lays out everything that the work request is about. It tells me that it's a PM. It tells me who it's assigned to and who's requested it. Over here, I can also manually enter the hours it's taking me to complete this task. And then we also have our statuses as well. So right now we have a new or in process, and that's because after this has been placed in an in process status, I will then see a complete button up here, which will allow me to complete this work request after I have achieved this task of visual inspection. If you want, you can also connect a time clock directly to your work requests. And to do that, that is through your cost setups, and it's actually a cost subtype for maintenance. So if I click that time clock button there, I can clock myself directly into maintenance right here. And this will tie in with my time clock records to say, hey, Danielle's been spending the past 30 minutes performing maintenance on a piece of machinery. Now, as your maintenance user is getting ready to perform the maintenance on their piece of equipment, they can simply check good or bad based on the task that they're performing. Another thing too, you can print out the work request if your user actually just wants a physical piece of paper to check good or bad, or to add any additional notes that they might have. They can do it this way. One kind of cool thing about the work request system though is if I was to select bad here for my visual inspection, we see as soon as I selected bad, there was a little star that came up here for special code, which shows me that I have to select something here. And I can add some additional notes. But if I select this task as bad, and we're just going to update the screen, change the status. So we're going to say that task is bad, and I press complete. The system's automatically going to create a follow-up work request for that individual bad task. So that just created here work request number 16. It's a follow-up from work request 13, which I was just in, and it shows me what that PM schedule is. It also again shows me here that that's a follow-up. So if I go back in here to this work request, again, it shows me here that it's a follow-up. And I again have to complete this task. The system will keep recreating or regenerating work requests for you until you mark that task as good in the system. So as we've gone along, we've created a couple of different work requests. And just to show you real quick, I do have some notifications set up. So if I go into my email transaction log and do a search for today, you're going to see different work requests have been created or completed. And that's the system letting me know every time I do one of those actions, it's triggering an email to send directly to me. And it simply gives you your work request number and the due date, and some additional instructions there as well. I'm going to hop over into the test database real quick. And here we have created, or I have a workflow turned on. So I'm just going to go into this work request here. And as somebody, as myself or a maintenance user goes through the actual work request, they can update the workflow itself. So right now, this workflow is just 3 simple steps. The work request is created, the maintenance is performed, and then the request is completed. So right now I'm at the perform maintenance step. So I'll just go back out here to my work request and I'll select my task as good. We'll say everything was good to go here. I'll save my changes to the work request. And then I'll go into my workflow and say that this section is completed here. And now my status is complete. This is based off of a setting in Plex that shows that any time that I get to that complete status or any time that I mark my work request as complete within the action bar up here, the workflow is automatically going to go to the step where the workflow is complete. Again, using the workflow, you can trigger additional notifications so that if one person has to complete one task and a different user has to complete a second task, they can receive notifications when their time is up for them to complete the tasks that they have. And finally, what I wanted to discuss real quick about reporting, there is some cool reporting for work requests within Plex. If you have multiple maintenance users, for example, you can always use just the general work request screens and filter it by your work request users or who's requested it by, or for particular pieces of equipment as well. But there are also some reports out there in the system that kind of help you see those items as well. So I'm going to go search here. There is this report in UX. It's not available in Classic, but in UX it's called Maintenance Work Requests by Employee. And your maintenance manager can essentially filter by their employee name and see everything that that employee has due in the coming week, for example. There's additional maintenance reports. For example, this maintenance performance indicators report, which breaks down your requests that are coming from the actual manufacturing floor and who's requesting them. You also have a list of running requests. And again, this is just from the control panel only. And then down here, you have different non-PM work requests, and those counts will show up down here in this particular field. Down here, there's PMs by due date, so you have an actual visual to show you when something's coming due or how many work requests you have due and how soon that they're due. One other cool thing that you can kind of tie in your work requests to is the Pareto analysis, and that's coming off of your event or your downtime events over here at the control panel. So anytime that I have to create a work request by changing a work center status, we can also see that within the Pareto screen. So we can see here that there are some electrical events that happened, which is what happened when I selected my press problem electrical. So all that ties into your Pareto analysis as well. So with that being said, that's it for the information I have to share with you guys. I'd like to open the floor up for some questions at this point.
Thanks, Danielle. And just a reminder, I did mute everybody, so if you're trying to ask a question and you can't be heard, let me know in case for some reason, you should be able to unmute yourself, but just in case you can't.
Hey, Danielle, this is Albie from Cooster. One
Hi.
of the questions that I have, and I've been working through turning on workflow for the maintenance requests that we already use.
Yep.
Is there integration between confirming that the tasks are complete before marking the workflow
Right.
complete.
Yep. So I saw your question out on the community about that. I have not been able to get the system to do that. And I think the reason is because the workflow is essentially not looking at what's being completed, it's just looking at the status. So if you change the status via workflow, it's not going to catch on to something, a task that hasn't been completed.
Okay. And then sort of follow up to that with in the complete button as it shows up and the workflow. I've seen notes in the classic wiki that says you've got to make a choice, one or the other. How true is that? Because I've been able to make both work and show up at the same time. What's the implications there?
So I've also ran into some issues trying to set up workflow within the work request as well in terms of like the complete button. And it seems to me that you always have to either within the system press that complete button and then go into the workflow to complete the workflow, or you just go into the workflow to complete it with all, and then that's that. What I have found, and let me see if I can go back there. Let's go into the settings here real quick. And I'm just gonna filter on workflow. That's not it. There is a specific setting for work requests and workflows that say that anytime that complete button is hit, you can automatically direct your workflow to like a completed step, for example. So that kind of fills that gap. Does that help?
The workflow module use that.
This isn't the setting. I can
okay.
email you the particular setting that I'm thinking of. It's not showing up here for me right now, but I can follow up with you on that particular setting that will redirect your workflow once you press that complete button.
Okay, perfect. Thanks.
Yep.
Patty, this is Aaron from Aaron Thomas. You did something, you under the schedule, you set up a projected work request count. Why would you set up a count as opposed to just having it go into infinity?
So the count just always, so in my particular example there, let me get over to my equipment list real quick. So the projected work count, I set it to 3. And what that's going to do is that's always going to have 3 of those work requests always showing in the work request screen. If I left it at 0, the work request would just add every time it needs to be added. But having those projected work requests out there helps you to have a visual of what's coming down the pipeline. So instead of a work request just randomly showing up on a Tuesday or a Thursday, I'm going to have those 3 that are in there for the next Tuesday, Thursday, Tuesday, for example. So it's just kind of more of a guide to help you see what's coming up in the future. Does that help?
Thank you. Thank you. That answers the question.
Okay.
Hello, Danielle.
Hi.
Hi, this is Steve Kimmick with OK Industries. Just wanted to ask the question. We're currently using a third-party maintenance software for scheduling our maintenance requests, but we're looking at the Plex module, maintenance module. Now, the question I have is, in your equipment form, when you were setting up an equipment form, you were able to actually schedule maintenance by production hours. Now, the one question I have is, during that, to schedule, based on production hours, do those production hours roll up based on a specific operator working, logging into that workstation, assuming that machine is operating all of the time that the person is logged onto that work center, or is there a a third-party integrated connection that actually monitors spindle on time for example.
Gotcha. I'm not sure how integration would necessarily work. I'm not saying it can't be done. I just don't know the answer to that. But any time that any operator, it's not just limited to one operator, is logged into the work center where that piece of equipment is being used, it will run those production hours.
Okay. So that's its run up. In other words, if I have an operator that forgets to log out of this, at the end of the day, and they roll up an extra, 16 hours till they come back in the next day, how does that?
So that would then be counted into the production hours there, but you could potentially edit those within the production or the equipment log itself. So you can tie that time back.
Okay. All right.
But yeah, if somebody leaves their work center logged in overnight, then yeah, it's going to count against those production hours.
Now, is there and I know our our account administrator has been trying to get to somehow connect our clocking system with with Plex, so that if an operator punches out, say, to go home, it automatically will disengage them from any work center that they're logged on to. I'm not sure how much success we're having with that, but do you know of something that would be able to connect to our clocking system or a clocking system? Or is it specifically Plex, you have to log off your work center?
Sure. So Patty, I don't know if you want to take this one, but I believe that there is a way within the system that if you're clocked out altogether, you're clocked out of everything, correct?
Yeah, there are a couple things that we could do. I guess what I would suggest to have you do is give Danielle or me an email, and we'll take it offline and walk you through some options, because Plex has got so many new APIs out, and I just think there's a lot of exciting things that we can do with integration now that we maybe couldn't do even as recently as a year ago. So definitely, please reach out to Danielle and I, and one of us will get back to you and give you some ideas.
Excellent, excellent. One final question. When you were talking about spare parts, you could require or have spare parts available for typical maintenance procedures. Is there provisions in that in this maintenance module that will that will hold min-max quantities or trigger ordering if if you're consuming a last switch or
Sure. So that is that's not directly within the maintenance system, but that's actually within the supply items themselves. So in my example, I was saying that gloves were needed to complete one of these maintenances. Within the supply item system itself, I can set a min and a max for how many I must always have on hand. And if I reach that minimum, Plex can notify me that, hey, it's time for you to order more gloves. And that's done outside of the maintenance system.
So that's just basic MRO ordering?
Pretty much, yep.
Okay, all right, I understand. Excellent. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Sure. Do we have your email address?
I just messaged it to you, just so you know.
Perfect, thank you.
Plus, Danielle's going to show it once she gets back to her presentation too. So,
any other questions?
Danielle, we just got a couple minutes before to finish up. So,
Danielle, this is Aaron from Aaron Thomas again.
Hi.
We have equipment that frequently moves between work centers. Does the equipment always have to be assigned to a work center?
No, it does not. Well, yes and no. You need it to be tied to a particular work center just to show that they're to record your counts, for example, if you are basing your PMs off of counts, so like work center counts or part counts. If you are just basing your maintenance off of dates, so like once a month you got to check it, then no, that's not going to be, that you don't have to have that connection.
Thanks.
So it just depends on how you want to manage your schedules.
Hello, this is Christina from Wanco, and I just have a question that, is there a way to upload many hundreds of work centers into your equipment list? Is there an upload template?
So there is an upload template for your equipment, which I believe you can tie your work centers to. Let's double check that real quick.
Just say, I'm just making numbers up, but say we have 200 work centers, but then we probably just have 20 or 30 pieces of equipment, you know, boilers or things like that we can add manually, but we have many work centers. It would be nice just to upload those as equipment.
Yep, so you can, so on this upload here, you would list out your equipment here, and then you would also list out the work centers where that piece of equipment is being used.
So we could just have it be a one-to-one relationship, equipment to work center if we wanted to?
That's a good question. I'm not entirely sure how the upload would function. So if you're using the same piece of equipment or at multiple work centers, I don't know if using the upload would apply or create duplicates of that piece of equipment for every work center or not. I would have to test that offline.
All right, I'll try it and test and see what happens.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
Seems like a good plan. Danielle, would you mind flipping to the next slide?
Sure will.
Great. So I want to thank everybody, including you, Danielle. Awesome job, as per usual. I hope this has gotten everybody on the call excited about Plex preventative maintenance. Candidly, it is one of the most popular phase 2 options that our clients implement, often on their own with just a couple hours of guidance. We're really enjoying providing these free sessions for you. Next week, we're going to be covering yield measurements. So our Kevin Pope is going to be on that one, different yield calculations. We've got some future scheduled session for problem control, month-end procedures, and learning about net demands in MRP and PRP. So we hope to continue to see there. And just one last request, everybody, remember our YouTube channel. Take a minute or two to like our videos, please. Those thumbs up mean a lot to us. So even if you watched it in live, we'd appreciate you taking a few seconds to give us a few props. I'll be putting this session up sometime this afternoon. And if you can't find our YouTube channel, I got to be honest with everybody, if you Google YouTube Control+M, you're going to find a different software package that PLC controls. So you'll want to definitely go out to our website, which is www.control+m.solutions. No net, no .net, no .com, just .solutions. And there's a banner on there that'll take you right out to our YouTube page, and you'll get all 8 sessions after about 3 o'clock this afternoon Eastern time. You'll get all 8 sessions available at any given time. So thanks again, and email Jill if you want to be on next week's session. We'll be sending that invite out later today. And go ahead and subscribe to our channel. Everything out there is free. Help you guys get the most of Plex. Thanks again, Danielle. Great job today.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.